Welcome to another edition of the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast. The legendino Tim Vickery is in Rio as usual. How's it over there, Tim?
Absolutely beautiful. It's so nice in the autumn sunshine that all of the locals are complaining about how hot it is. What's the matter with these people?
Yeah, I thought you'd say that, actually. Well, for your information, it's getting rather warm here as well. Obviously not in the same league. There's still a bit of chill in there. As you can see, I've got my jacket on. This side of the house is, because it's pointing sort of northwards, never ever gets any sunshine. It's actually freezing on this side of the house. Go to the other side of the house.
Yeah, well, see, this is the problem with your house. And your house,
I know,
it's so big that it's got time zones. You know, when it's 3 o'clock in the kitchen, it's 5 o'clock in the living room.
I forgot that you'd been to Adebayo Towers, but yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the match that we want to talk about today, because we're always on the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast, for anybody who doesn't know, look at an iconic game from some time in the past and try and put a sort of social and musical context to it. This match, you see, I don't remember the match, but I remember the circumstances for obvious reasons. Like everybody else, you're nodding away there. So it's the 12th of June, 1980. It's England versus Belgium in what I guess was the Euros 1980.
Very much, yes. Yeah, and this is the first time that the Euros has grown into a kind of tournament. There's only 8 teams. It's 2 groups of 4, and the winners meet in a final. So it's a short tournament, but it's a tournament. Yes.
Winner of each group meets in a final.
Before that, the only part of the Euros that had been a tournament was the semi-finals and the final. So it was a tournament that didn't even last a week. Now it's starting to get bigger. And this, I remember this so vividly because I've just turned 15. And believe it or not, this is amazing. It's the first time I've seen England in a tournament. Because I'm just too young for Mexico 70. And after that, there's no tournaments. We don't qualify for the World Cups of 74 and 78. We don't qualify for the tournament bit of 72 or 76 in the Euros. 76, we don't even get close. So after 10 years, I'm 15. And I'm this is England in a tournament. This is the first time. This is such a big thing for me to see England in a tournament for the first time. And it's the first tournament for all of the players. And it's also, and it blows my mind thinking about this, it's the first tournament where England have travelling support. And think about it. You know, there's been no tournament since Mexico 70. Now, some went out to Mexico. But obviously, it's not very many, and it's a long, long way, and it's expensive.
They all wore sombreros, I remember.
Yes,
in every news clip, the England supporters were wearing sombreros.
Indeed, but there aren't many of them, you know. 68, we participate in that little tournament in Italy in the Euros, semi-final, and we play the third, fourth place off. But I don't think many went then. 66, we're obviously at home in the World Cup. 64, we didn't make it to the Euros. 62 is in Chile, and no one went. 60, we didn't make it to the Euros. 58 is in Sweden, and all of the home nations were there. But I don't think anyone really sent fans. It was just too early. People didn't go abroad. You know, I didn't go abroad for the first time since 1988. You know, didn't have passports. Yeah. So it's the first time that there's... It's amazing to think of this. Me, because this is, you know, in our almost adult, you're a young adult by then, and I'm an adolescent, and it's the first time, something that now is you think of as absolutely normal and commonplace. It's the first time that there is a travelling army of England supporters.
Yeah, I was going to say, in context, those who went abroad, the only people I ever knew who went abroad went to Boulogne for the day. Around my area, went for Boulogne in France, in northern France, for the day, and they generally went to the post office to get a international travel identity card that you could get for like 50p.
Yeah,
and get
visitor's passport or something
like that. Yeah, something like that. I suppose they weren't as bothered about people coming from over here as they perhaps would be nowadays, and as long as you've got a return sort of ticket over here with this identity thing, you were allowed into the United Kingdom. You couldn't have anything like that in those days. Another thing about this was the tournament was in Italy. I don't know anybody who went that far away. furthest people went to that I ever heard about was Spain, southern Spain. I knew one or two kids at school that were of Italian origin that went to Italy on their holidays, or like I was talking to you before about growing up in Little Cyprus, people did go back to Cyprus for their holidays, but there was nobody. I don't think many people could have pinpointed Italy out on the map in 1980. I'm talking about even amongst young adults like myself. It's kind of, which one is Italy? The way I remembered it was the left boot of Europe. Is what one of our teachers. Oh right, okay, that's the one. But they had to tell you that. Imagine that, Tim. To keep it in your mind, to make you remember it, they had to tell you, think of a left boot. Well, that's Italy. So
I think some people were going on kind of package holidays. You know, the more we all remember from the mid '70s, Viva España. You know, the big hit record because people were starting to go. And I remember being a plot line in Porridge in the mid '70s. One of them, you know, it's Norman Stanley Fletcher and Lenny Godber are inside, and one of them, it's either Fletcher's daughter or Godber's girlfriend. They've gone to Rimini. I had to ask, what's that mean? What's that mean? Yeah, that means
Rimini. I went to Rimini, and okay, this is Rimini, but I couldn't have pinpointed it out on the map. Like I said, people did go to Spain. You know, people went to Magaluf or wherever it was. They did go there, or Benidorm or places like that. I didn't know anybody who did. You know, this is like something that you heard about in the ether. By now, though, 1980, funnily enough, I was on my adventures in Europe. I was studying in Sweden at the point, in Stockholm. I was the only person in my school who went that far adrift that I knew of in my year.
It's really adventurous.
Yeah, a couple of mates came over to see me because, like, wow, where the hell is that? You know, where's Sweden? It sounded like Russia. And it wasn't far off, actually. But I didn't know many people hitchhiking like I was hitchhiking through France. I thought everybody would be doing it as soon as we left school because we didn't have any money. The only way we were going to go and see the world or travel anywhere was by hitchhiking. I think the difference was, though, Tim, I had a Nigerian passport.
Right.
See, since I'd come to Britain, I'd had a Nigerian passport. And when you've got a passport, you're used to sort of getting visas everywhere in any case with a Nigerian passport. But once you've travelled, I had to travel to get to Britain when I was 6 years old, fair enough, by plane. But around my area, nobody else had been on a plane. Nobody else, maybe the Greeks, sorry, apologies, but apart from the Greeks and Turks, but nobody else, even the Greeks and Turks, often they drove as much of the way as they could, you know, and the Italians certainly did, as I remember. Anyway, so just to put it into context, this was an adventure in itself, and there's an important reason for putting it into context. Remember, I said I don't remember the match. Just keep that in mind. So let's talk about this. The England team have not been to an international tournament for a decade. So that's going to have an effect on them. They've got a new manager as well in Ron Greenwood. He's taken over from
Don Revie.
Don Revie, of course.
So he's been in there for nearly 3 years. So he's not that new. He's had time to kind of form what he wants to do, and it's not a bad side at all. But they come up against Belgium are the big surprise packets in this tournament. They go all the way to the final.
They always are when they do well. You know, the dark horses, Belgium.
I remember them being in the build-up, being totally underestimated. It was just they were there to make up the numbers. I don't know if I imagine that Greenwood didn't do this because he had a reason to, and I'll get there in a minute. Because Belgium haven't qualified for the last 2 World Cups. But the Belgian teams were strong at this point. It's only 2 years earlier that Bruges got to the final of the European Cup. They lost to Liverpool at Wembley. 2 years before that, and this is why Greenwood would have known them, West Ham got to the final of the Cup Winners' Cup and got ripped apart by Anderlecht 4-2. So the clubs were strong. Belgian clubs were strong in those days. And they had this, they'd recalled him, this little old bald midfielder.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Yes. Tiny little guy. Now, I knew him because he played the 70 World Cup. And I was obsessed with the 70 World Cup. I was too young for it, but I had a book with all of the lineups. I knew everyone who played in it. I was obsessed with it when I was a little kid. And he played in that. And I couldn't believe he was still alive. You know, the way you are when you're like 15. How is he still alive 10 years later? And you look at him and he looks like a little
he had a bald head. Just because he had a bald head
or something like that. Yeah, okay. But he kind of runs the game. Just little lays off one touch passes. They're not that interested in doing that much, Belgium. But what they've got, and this is the story of the game on the field, I think, what they've got is very similar to Holland. They've got this mad offside trap, loony offside trap. That's just the charge. And at the time, the linos were terrible. The linos weren't specialist linos. They were just referees. You go and run the line. And they were terrible. And so this mad collective charge out that they had, this worked time and time again. There's one from the 74 World Cup final with it's Holland and West Germany, where I think the Germany's like 3 or 4 yards onside, but it still gets given. You know, because when the defenders are all running one way and the attackers run in the other, it can look like he's miles offside, but at the time that the ball's playing, he can be on. And so, in doubt, the linos always put it up at that time. And so they were getting away. It was really frustrating to watch because they were squeezing the life out of the game, and it was so hard. And you know, you've expected, and here we come to this English sense. I don't know if it's still there. I don't know. It certainly was at the time. This natural sense of superiority, that something is going wrong when there's something wrong with nature if we're not rolling over the Belgians as we'd expected to.
It's entitlement as well.
Yes,
you know, we invented the game, so we go overseas with that in mind, and we expect everybody else to recognise that. I tell you what else the Belgians have got. They have got some hard defenders and midfielders, and they recognised very early on that Kevin Keegan, one of the great names in this side, arguably one of the best players. He's won European football. Is it? Yeah, UEFA football player of the year for a couple of years running when he was at Hamburg in Germany. And
he's just about to go back to England now. He's going to join Southampton for the new season. Oh, he gets kicked all over the place, doesn't he?
I thought, honestly, he's number 7, but he had the bushy sort of afro, and I thought this is like Madonna getting hacked down.
Yeah.
I said Madonna.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a senior slip, but Maradona getting hacked down. It looked like
it does look similar.
It's a bit similar, and so they hacked him down, and then you thought there isn't a huge amount of creativity after that.
There should be. I mean, Greenwood's gone for, because Greenwood was an idealist, and he's gone for, on his midfield, it's Trevor Brooking and Ray Wilkins. You know, Ray Wilkins is the anchor man. He's a fabulous player, I think, Ray Wilkins, and this is one of the great all-time moments of Ray Wilkins' career. This one, because he works out on his own what to do with the offside trap. As I think is it a corner that Belgium have cleared, and it breaks to Wilkins, and he thinks, you know what, I can do this all on my own. So he just lobs it over, runs round, and then it's a fabulous finish because the ball's still really high. Yeah. So what are you going to do? 99 players are going to blaze that because it's too high to bring under control. Or some of them might try and wait for it to come down, and you give time for the defence to come back, and you get tackled. Wilkins, while the ball is still high, just beautifully dinks it over the goalkeeper into the top corner. I think it's just a fabulous goal from Ray Wilkins, who's worked out on his own how to beat the offside trap. Because obviously, if he's played the ball 5 yards in front of the defensive line, over the top, he can't possibly be offside. Even these linos can't raise it for that. But then the tragedy of it, and this I think you have to put down to England's lack of tournament experience, is lack of focus. And just 2 or 3 minutes later, they concede a really silly, it's a sloppy goal from a corner. Now the Belgian attack line
with the bald head. He took the corner.
Yeah, yes. On the Belgian attack, it's a young attacking trio. The one who scores the goals, Kerlemans, goes on to be a legend. He's still playing when we have that great game against Belgium in the World Cup 10 years later. Frankie van der Elst, who soon afterwards went to West Ham. Van den Berg, who was a terrific player. Van der Eycken in the midfield, who could kick but also had a lovely left foot. So they're back on level terms, and as soon as the goal goes in, it all kicks off behind the goal, defended by Ray Clements.
And as I understand it, when we say kicking off, arguably the England fans who got the blame, as you would expect, and there is a political aspect to this that we'll come to in a moment. The England fans who got the blame had been taunted. Whether I'm not saying that that's a justification or whatsoever, but there'd been well, no, but there'd been a preamble, hadn't there, with the Italian fans into
it's not Belgian fans, is it?
Exactly.
It's a fight going on between England fans and a travelling army of Belgian fans. It's not that. This game is in Turin, and it's England against. And the stadium's not very full. Well, no, there was some dreadful.
This is a problem. Yeah, one of the problems of this tournament is that you could just rock up and get a ticket. Yeah. That's why the stadium is full of Italian fans. So when Belgium score, the Italian fans are giving it the old, yeah, you cocky little geezers. What do you like? And, if you know anything about football hooliganism, let me tell you that the memories live long. So a dust-up in Turin just a couple of days ago is still going to be sitting there with the hooligans who want some revenge on both sides, on the Italian side, etc. And they're there to get their revenge on the England fans. So they start taunting the England fans. Everything kicks off. This is the bit that you realise that this was an era when UEFA didn't have control of their own tournaments, because the police come in and the police do what they do in Europe.
First of all, there's no segregation and there's no police. First of all. So it's just a ruck.
You do actually see the ruck, toe to toe. Don't you? Or kick for kick. You see it on the videos. Because by now the football cameras are focusing on what's going on the terraces. They've forgotten about what's going on the pitch. Suddenly all you see is this ruck between Italian and England fans.
They should have been more prepared because of what was going on, especially with English clubs in the cup competitions. But this is like the first time it's ever been done as like a tournament with the English travelling fans. So maybe the fact it's a national team tournament, they haven't really prepared for it. So there's no segregation and there's no police presence, it seems. There's nothing, just this ruck going on until, as you say, in storm the police. If it's a ruck between the visiting English barbarian hordes, Il Bruto del Norte, and the local Italian lads, you know whose side the police are going to be on, don't you?
Of course. And they come into it, they steam in like, what I'd expect from South American police. They steam in with tear gas first, no questions asked. And I could not believe that. I couldn't believe the tear gas, because, we are where we are in 2024, looking back at that and thinking, what, tear gas? How can you continue the game if you've just been firing tear gas into the vicinity? That stuff stays in the stadium for a while before it all disappears. And of course, when everything settles down, at least the ruck settles down, the play shouldn't have been allowed to carry on, should it?
You think they should have abandoned the game?
Well, if you've got Ray Clements, who's in goal for England, complaining that, he can't see, I would suggest that was a huge disadvantage to the England team at that point.
Yeah, but give him a few minutes and wash his eyes out and he'll be all right.
Have you ever been tear gassed?
I have, yeah.
I've never been tear gassed, but people say it makes you...
Really?
What do you mean you're joking? I'm not joking. What do you mean joking?
Do what? A man of your previous.
Oh, yeah. But that was all in England, the previous stuff, yeah. Apart from the stuff that was in Sweden. And obviously they wouldn't fire tear gas over there either. But
Mm.
no, on a serious note though, the tear gas, from what I understand, makes you nauseous, makes you want to vomit, makes you. It's not just about eyes, is it? It's skin irritation, etc.
I think it affects different people in different ways. And I've been caught up in a few situations with the Brazilian police when they've done it. And maybe it's not as potent tear gas, but I've kind of been all right with it, you know. And I wear contact lenses, so I'm a bit worried about the you know. So just get to the side and wait for, close your eyes a little bit. They're even like, they were during the time of mass protests here. They were even like giving courses in how to deal with it. You know,
Yes,
I
yes,
can't remember
yes.
what it was. You know, stuff that you use to cover. So when it does go away, it takes time to disperse. And once they've got, see, I think they've probably got to carry on with the game once they've got the situation under control. It's this. With football calendars, there's just no space to do anything else. Is there?
But then Mrs. Thatcher weighs in, and she may as well have applauded the Italian police. As far as she's concerned, this was all the fault of.
She's probably one of those people who thinks that the film Midnight Express is a tribute to the Turkish prison system.
Yeah, of course. But it's not just her, though. I mean, she is in Venice at the time at an EU, what was then the Common Market, still, I think, conference in Venice. So it couldn't have been a better story for the English papers. If they're looking for a rock to pin on English football fans, the fact that it's happening in a country where the Prime Minister is sitting as one of many world leaders at a conference adds her opinion in, whether she knows anything about football or not. Suddenly she's in the mix of all of these because it's happening in Italy, and she's embarrassed and the country's embarrassed. But then the England backroom staff, the coach and everything, start sticking the boot in as well. Yeah. That all of the England teams seem to.
Well, yeah, because they've seen this already. Not only with club games, they've seen it with England games. I remember the Hoolies going on a game in Luxembourg. You know, I mean, I've never been there, but inoffensive place like Luxembourg.
I've never been there either. But yeah, last place that you would expect, the A team to go out looking to conquer Europe again after 1066 and all of that.
But it is bizarre. But I find it quite frightening, the mentality of the right-wing nationalistic English fans, England fans of that time. It's like kind of lumpen proletariat, horrible mob. It's probably one of the occasions where I might even agree with Thatcher.
Yeah,
but very often.
But the England team were then caught in the position, including the coach, including Ron Greenwood, of talking of those fans as animals and this kind of. They shouldn't have used the language about it. And if you want to talk about this, talk about it in a grown-up way. I think Kevin Keegan said something like, "Look, 95% of our fans are brilliant, but it's just this 5%." And I thought 5%, that's high actually. Maybe what he should have said was 5% of those away fans. Of those away fans that were there with them.
Do you remember the atmosphere in the stadiums at the time? There were, there was this group who were up for a fight and really, and so much of the rest of the stadium egged them on. So I think that there's a kind of collective responsibility of what happened in English football during those years. You were proud of the aggro of your fans, and you wanted your fans their aggro to be more powerful than the aggro of the opposing fans.
I suppose, in a way, if you're fearful at a football match from the abuse that's coming from the opposition's or the home fans generally, or no, sometimes the away fans, but the opposition's fans, if you're fearful of that and then you see people who are standing up for what you perceive is your position, then I can see how that would happen. But I don't remember that at all. At this point, I remember looking on in horror at violence at football grounds. Saw a couple of things. Chelsea always seemed to have a ruck in them. Leeds as well. Saw that up at Elland Road and down south. Who else? Which other teams off the top of my head? Well, in the lower leagues, I can tell you that, you know, when I went to Colchester in those days, I was always, you know, this was just before the time I went to university. This 1980 up in Colchester, and I can tell you that there always seemed to be a ruck down there from about 84.
Squaddy town, wasn't it? So it's a
yeah,
squaddy
partly
town.
that. It's partly that, but it's also partly, like you were saying before, about how a lot of Londoners migrated to sort of slightly less expensive areas, and you've got a lot of that up in Colchester as well. And I suppose when you migrate away from the area, you think you're missing out on whatever else is going on, so try and replicate some of that. But I don't ever remember sort of like thinking, oh good. I mean, the last time, funny enough, the last time I saw any attempt at violence, and this was away side egging on the violence, right? And that was at Barnet up by my way. It was only about 10 years ago, I think it was. Yeah, up to 10 years, probably about 12 years ago. And I think it was, from what I remember, it could have been Chester fans, but I might have that wrong. So never mind who the fans were, but they basically ambushed us as we all were minding our business. It looked a bit pathetic and stupid. But I just remember being horrified that, look, no, where's the violence? What's the matter with you, kind of thing. But if some Barnet fans did come round who wanted to stick the boot into them as well, but I can't remember it being coming out to very much, because, you know, Barnet weren't like that. It's like, I've got to say, like Charlton fans, really, you know, Charlton fans aren't really up for a rock. But there is an element, there is a very small element of Charlton fans who felt like, you know, they needed to prove something or other. I don't know what it was. But mostly we got ambushed by Millwall fans, Crystal Palace, another time I seem to remember. But we weren't really up for a ruck. And I think if you go to a football match peacefully, you should be allowed to get on with it peacefully, but there will be an element. Anyway, I thought 95% was a little bit of
yeah, but you got to remember, from the perspective of the players,
they're probably embarrassed as well, though.
Yeah, but certainly for their countries, this is the biggest game that they've ever played. Now, I know Keegan's played European Cup finals with Liverpool and Hamburg and so on, but this is huge. Yeah, it's huge for them. You know, it's a massive, massive moment. Your first game in a tournament for your country. And it's been ruined by these arseholes. You know, I don't blame them for lashing out.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't blame them. I don't blame the authorities for sticking the boot into the hooligans, but I think they need to be a bit careful when they're talking about England fans in general.
Lessons should have been learned, shouldn't they? Because we're now on the slippery slope towards Heysel, and Heysel is not only a question of a violent terrorist culture, it's also a question of inept stadium management. And it's the two things together that we see on this day in Turin, which is the city where most of those who died in Heysel come from. But it's the same things 5 years later. The combination between a terrorist culture based on an excess of testosterone and totally incompetent stadium management leads to the deaths of those people at Heysel. And you're seeing it here, and you're thinking, if they'd have taken the right steps at that point, maybe Heysel wouldn't have happened.
I think you're, right. I don't know the reasons behind why Heysel happened or not, but I'll say something. If the politicians had been serious, if Mrs. Thatcher, I'm not blaming her at all. Like I said, I don't know the reasons behind Heysel, but if instead of calling these hooligans animals and being incensed in that way, she had said, look, this is never going to happen again under my watch. And she was, the toughest prime minister that Britain had seen since whenever. I think we'd have gone some way into managing.
Yeah, when she didn't understand football.
I don't think she did. No, I don't think she did.
On Heysel, there's a number of things that went terribly wrong on the day. Number one was the stadium was falling to bits because it was about to be demolished. So what's the point of doing maintenance on somewhere that's about to be demolished? So it's falling to bits. The way that they the way that they sold the tickets, and Liverpool protested about this before, inevitably meant that there would be a group of Juventus fans just next to the Liverpool fans, a little bit like the lack of segregation that we see in Turin 1980. There is at the start totally inadequate separation between those fans at Heysel, as there was no segregation, no police separation, and also at Heysel the police walkie-talkies didn't work. So there's a need for look, because all that, just an effective line of police would have removed the danger of what happened at Heysel. And this is a lesson that should have been learnt from Turin 1980. The one thing, but obviously, if the fans are not going to want to fight each other, then none of this is even necessary. So you have to point the finger of blame at the fans as well. That aggressive terrorist culture that was based on capture of space.
That nuts. Absolutely
in
nuts.
the restricted space of a stadium, that is highly, highly dangerous.
And there, I mean, when you look at the footage from Heysel, I do remember it very vividly because, like I said, I was at university at that time, and it was like we were looking on in horror. When you look at some of the footage of that, you can see the hardcore ultras on both sides, on all sides, if you like. You can see them. They're kind of loving it. They're kind of enjoying the fact that they've.
Well, it's a huge adrenaline kick if you're into that, isn't it?
Well, I just don't know where that comes from, Tim. I generally don't know where that comes from.
No, nor do I. I'm going to ruin my clothes. Don't want that.
Exactly. That's the reason they kept telling us to come in our best clothes to get into the nightclub. No trainers, no hats, no hoodies. You had to come in your Sunday best, mate.
You spent coin on that, and you ain't going to ruin it. Riding on the
floor. Don't step on my blue suede shoes, mate. That was what that was all about. Do anything you want to do, though. But yeah, I didn't really understand. But what I was going to say about the politicians, I think at the time when Mrs. Thatcher came out of that EU meeting or Common Market meeting in Venice, she should have said something much more elegantly profound. And she should have been serious about it, because arguably one of the things you did hear from the FA, they got fined about $3 grand, was it? 4 or 5 grand, was it? For the violence at this Belgian match, where the violence with the Italian fans who were egging them on. But they kept complaining about the fact that, why it's not the amount of money, it's not a huge amount of money. So I have to say it in that accent, because that's how I hear the FA officials talking in my head. But why should we pay 5 grand for these hooligans? Why should we pay? Actually, what they should have been doing is saying, how can we stop these hooligans from causing another?
There was that famous phrase, was it from Ted Croker, that he said to Thatcher, "Get your hooligans out of our football stadiums."
Oh yeah.
And to an extent, you agree with him, but also football had to take responsibility, and it didn't take responsibility.
But it would have if the Prime Minister, if the government had clamped down on football and said, "Look, no, you're not going anywhere till you get this." They could have not anticipated Heysel. Nobody could have anticipated that tragedy, but they could have anticipated the embarrassment and whatnot, and the dangers of allowing English football fans who are going to go abroad and cause violence to go abroad. They would do it today, If I was going to go to, I remember I had a society at university, and we were going to take everybody by boat to Scandinavia, to go and have a great time. But the way that I wrote the invite to people within the university was, "Oh yeah, let's go over there, and we'll go and have a little bit of too much of a good time." Somebody at university saw that and sent it to the tour company, the tour company cancelled our thing because it looked like we were going to go. It was in this time. This would have been 84, like I said, maybe 85.
What's this kind of revenge on the Vikings or something? Is that what
it was something like that? Yeah. Yeah. They came over here. Let's go over there, and let's make sure you wear one of those tin hats with the horn sticking out the side as well. But it was something. It was all in joke and jest. It was nothing. I would my furthest. Nightmares. I didn't think that anybody would interpret it in any other way. That like a bunch of lads going to have fun, but it's how you look at it and what context you look at it at. So suddenly, the tour company was saying to me, "You cannot, as certainly not from Britain, as an English person, go overseas on our boats, suggesting let's go and have a great time. Let's all go and get pissed. Let's all go on the Raz." It was like language like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because of the English fans' reputation by this time, it was going to result in other impacts, and it wasn't a good look. The government should have stepped in, is my view. And that started with that, put pressure on the FA.
The huge irony here is that I'd imagine that the vast majority of those causing the problems were Thatcher voters.
I don't know about that.
I think I probably do.
I don't know about that. I think what you said at the beginning, earlier on, I did see some sort of national frontism creep into football about this time, around 1980. They tried it with punk, as I've said to you before. I did try and see them. I did see them physically. I literally saw it with my own eyes. The National Front, the BNP, it was mostly National Front those days, but they cut from the same cloth, trying to infiltrate punk gigs to try and sort of get to recruit people. But I didn't see it happening with my own eyes in football, but I did see with my own eyes suddenly that there was like chants of NF and stuff within football grounds. And that was not a comfortable time. As a black football supporter, it wasn't a comfortable time. It pissed me off, to be frank, but that aside, I think the people that are just prepared to kick out like that, they probably don't even vote, Tim. I'm not sure if they're
well, I think they're the kinds of ones at the time who were buying their council houses.
Yeah. That's probably true. But I'm not sure if they were the ones that were kicking foreigners around overseas. It takes a different level. I do think other people get caught in it in football hooligans. If you're in an area in a football ground and it kicks off, what are you going to do? But I don't think the people that I remember sort of kicking off in the times that I've seen it sort of develop from an early time, there were people who were there for a rug. For a rug. There's one or two exceptions who were like old timers from the days. I know, like some of my West Ham friends will tell me about the days when they were like proper. We are the old school of West Ham ultras, and we are going to walk through this bit of your territory and get all stoned in Torino. I'm pretty sure it was Torino as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In Turin there. Where was it that West Ham were playing? I can't remember where it was, but they all came out like, Crombies and everything like that. And they walked proudly through these neighborhoods, getting stuff chucked at them and everything. That, I think, is about claiming your territory. We're going to take it. But the other bit where we're just going to go there and kick off, no, I've never understood that, except from people who weren't what I would call football fans.
Well, the game resumes, and the rest of the game is Belgium are very happy 1-1. Very, very happy with 1-1.
Yeah,
and they kill the rest of the game with their bloody offside trap. And a combination of their offside trap and the incompetence of the linos. And there's a couple of times where you're at anything, no way is that offside. Up goes the flag. And there's one very controversial moment when Tony Woodcock scores a goal. I think it's a cross from Kenny Sanson. And the goal's given, and everyone, and then hang on a minute, the linesman had his flag up for about offside. So it gets ruled out. So it was my first time watching England in a tournament. It was a very, very frustrating 90 minutes, as well as the scenes of violence and the tear gas and the war zone. You got a game that was frustrating, and England ended up drawing 1-1.
Well, the tournament eventually was won by Germany, as you'd expect, in a final against Belgium, as you wouldn't expect. But England didn't even manage to come third, did we?
No, came third in the group,
Okay.
and in the same group as Italy. That's part of the reason for the edge between the Italian fans and the English fans in the stadium, because England and Italy is seen as the two powers in this group. It's between England and Italy.
Yeah.
And the next game, the second game, is England against Italy. And we go down to a late goal. We lose 1-0. I remember Ray Kennedy hitting the post, and we lose 1-0. And that's really the end of England's tournament. Italy don't qualify for the final. They have to beat Belgium in the last game. And Belgium, with their bloody offside trap again, they squeeze the life out of it, and it's a 0-0 draw. So Italy don't make it to the final, despite not having conceded a single goal. And it's Belgium who go through on the basis of one win against Spain. Belgium go through to the final when they lose 2-1 to the Germans.
Yeah, and that offside trap nowadays, they couldn't pull it off twice, could they? Because you know, every bit of it.
Yeah, the linos are much better, and there's also a crazy little thing called VAR that would pull them up on some of those.
But I was thinking more that the Italians didn't learn anything from the way the Belgian drew with England. They should have learned from that, shouldn't they? And thought,
yes, they should have done.
See that Ray Wilkins touch? That's how we're going.
They were without. On the eve of the competition, they'd lost the star striker Paolo Rossi. There was that big bribe scandal, and he gets banned from football for a while. He comes back on the eve of the '82 World Cup, and he fires them to victory in that. So that was a huge loss for their team. The little live wire striker whose pace and mobility might have been perfect to get behind the Belgians offside trap.
He's a brilliant striker. You see what we've done? We've spent most of the time talking about hooliganism, because everybody does. When they talk about this match, that's what it's famous for. It's not as famous for the Belgian offside trap as you would like it to be. And you did your best to try and steer it back to that. Well done. Should we talk about the music of the time?
Oh, we should. Yeah, what a great time to be 15. Just turned 15.
Yeah, what a great time to be 20, 21, just turned 21.
I think any time's a good time to be 21, isn't it?
Actually, I haven't turned 21. I'm still 20 at this point. 12th of June, 1980. And the chart starts with the theme from MASH.
Yeah, why is that? I mean, Suicide is Painless. What on earth has taken that? I know. No, from a TV series of a decade earlier.
Yeah, it's the geeks, mate. It's the geeks have taken over the asylum. At number 2, though, is Don McLean's Crying. Did you like that?
Not particularly. I've got a lot of respect for Don McLean.
That wasn't his best, was it?
No, it's not at all. I didn't really understand its success.
This is a chart of people or big, huge bands putting out tunes that are not their best. Hot Chocolate at number 4, with no doubt about it. We'll come back to Funky Town at number 3 in a moment. That's not their best. Over You by Roxy Music, that's not their best. Rat Race by The Specials at number 7, that's not their best. I went through this chart thinking, all these great acts that you think, oh, come on, show me your best. Show me your best. Let's get to your best. But it failed so many times. A couple of times when it worked, but so many times on this I thought, is that their best? If Loving You Is Wrong, I Don't Want to Be Right, number 27 by Rod Stewart. It's a great track, but it's not his track, and he doesn't do it better than the original. So you're thinking, well, why are you putting that foot forward when an artist is supposed to be evolving all the time? I just found the chart was full of a lot of great acts that were not putting out their best. So let's talk about the rest. At number 3, Funky Town, Lips Incorporated. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah. I remember all of this. I just turned 15 and I remember all of this.
But this was it started out as an underground club tune, as you can hear. And really, in 1980, we're talking about the point where disco has kind of died. Disco, I don't think anybody's calling it disco at this point. But club tunes are just blowing up from absolutely nowhere. This is one tune that still go to any club today, you play that.
The one that in this chart that I would pair Funky Town with Lip Sync, Yellow Magic Orchestra, Computer Game.
Okay, Yes.
because
Why
it's
would you?
they
It's
kind of
digital.
passed me by a little bit at the time.
Yeah.
But Yellow Magic Orchestra, it's just so far ahead of its time. You're listening to the future. You're listening to the people who have taken on the baton from Kraftwerk. And when you're listening to Computer Game, even the title, and it's instrumental, but even the title is telling you futuristic. And I didn't understand any of this back then. But it's so much of techno, even the rap stuff that people start being able to make just on their own with a computer or whatever. So I think that those are two kind of technological records, Funky Town and Yellow Magic Orchestra, that really point the way to a lot of the stuff that's going to come in the future.
Yeah, and there's a couple of other things in the charts as well that I would say. I mean, I don't know what Gary Newman is doing with We Are Glass. Again, not his best moment. I could go on and on and on and on. But there are a couple of other things. It should have been his moment. It should be, because he's still riding on the sort of Cars wave, isn't he? Being this idiosyncratic artist that, well, he stayed on the idiosyncrasy when David Bowie had moved on from that. You know, David Bowie was becoming more sort of a standard artist by now, whereas Gary Newman was waving the flag for a sort of much more experimental kind of synthesized music. Anyway, there's a few other tunes in there. I would say, funny enough, that Police and Thieves for me is like Funky Town. It's not that it's digital, but it sounds like, it does sound like something totally different from anything else in the charts. It stands out like a sore thumb at number 23 here. It's a release of Police and Thieves, because it literally got into the charts about 1976, 77, I think, 76, maybe 77, first time around. But for me, it's just a little bit, it stands out differently from everything else. So the Scratch Surface Noise, which has got a little bit of jazz about it, number 28, I thought was a standout tune, one of the better standout tunes in this chart. So we've got Gino, of course, Dexy's Midnight Running.
So this is Gino's on his way down now.
Yeah.
And it's just about to be replaced in the charts by There, My Dear. And this is the sound that I remember as a 15-year-old kid from this kind of summer. Those Dexys horns.
Yeah.
It was the sound. And I loved both of those singles. And then they didn't record for a while, and the band was splitting up, and I lost track of them. And when they came back with the Touré thing, it wasn't for me. So I kind of regret, I kind of regret losing that connection, because at that time, just at this time, I just started reading the music press, and they were putting, instead of doing interviews, they pay for a full page ad in the NME with their manifesto. And just for a while, that was really, really important to me. And they'd come up, I think they'd been I'd seen them on the Two-Tone tour the year before with the Specials, and the Selector and Madness, and groups are coming up. The Beat are in the charts with Mirror in the Bathroom, which for me is probably their see, I think that's their finest 3 minutes. I love Mirror in the Bathroom. It just that little bit, the emphasis on mental health and it's beautifully done. You've also got Bad Manners with Lip Up Fatty.
Well, I'll tell you about Bad Manners.
I love the instrumental break on that.
It's good, yeah. I didn't really like them as they were picture of the two-tone. Like, I didn't really like that at all, because I didn't think they were two-tone. They're from North London, right up the street from where I lived. The next school, closest school from where I lived, was a school called Woodbury Down. They all went to Woodbury Down School, apart from the one member, saxophonist, original member, Christopher Kane, who was at school with me, and we played in our first band together at the age of 12, 13 years old, called the Edwardians. What I remember about Chris Kane is still about, I don't see him, but the one person I'm in touch with from my school days does still see him. And also I got him his first girlfriend, not directly, but he owes it to me. Let me just put it that way.
Sure he does.
Yeah, well, to all these things, I can accommodate all sorts in this respect. And not that he shared out any of his royalties with me. They put out so much stuff. They all got houses out of it, except for Chris Kane, because he was idiosyncratic within that idiosyncratic group. He was more into his classical music. You know, he learned the saxophone. His first instrument was piano. He learned saxophone. He couldn't tell his parents he'd got a saxophone. He had to go to Finsbury Park on a Sunday to learn piano saxophone, to play by himself, playing his saxophone. That's a true story, actually. And yeah, so they have that sort of sense in my mind. But they're another group who, Lip Up Fatty, was that their best one? Maybe it was, but I don't know.
Second hit for UB40 coming in here.
I was looking at that. Yeah, I don't fancy that. Do you?
Well, my way of thinking, it was quite lightweight. I liked it.
Yeah,
and you flip it over, and you got a terrific cover of I think It's Gonna Rain Today. It's
Yeah,
really sad. You know, quite moving. I thought they were great for a while. There's some other little gems.
Can I tell you an anecdote before you get to that little gem? I did a quick anecdote, if you don't mind, about UB40. I saw it on YouTube the other day. UB40 are now two groups, as you may well know, because Ali Campbell left the group. So Ali Campbell has to go under the moniker of UB40, which he puts in like size 150, you know, whatever they call it, typeface. And then he puts tiny typeface underneath, featuring Ali Campbell. That's what he has to do. UB40 featuring Ali Campbell. The featuring, you might miss it. And whereas the other UB40 can go out as UB40, not featuring anything. Anyway, so I'm on YouTube looking at this thing, and initially I saw Ali Campbell's brother Robin talking about Ali Campbell. So I thought, oh, I wonder what he's got to say about Ali Campbell, because I knew they'd, you know, split up in bad terms. In fact, I think you might remember me telling you that my missus did a gig last year, same place as Ali Campbell. He was top headline in the bill, and she was underneath him, support, I suppose you would say, but not necessarily support, just part of the festival. And that was Warwick Castle. So two of my mates are singing backing vocals for Ali Campbell, and I'm seeing them backstage, and they were like, yeah. So I said, tell me about the riff. And they said, well, just put it this way, Dotun, put it this way, that the other lot, you know, the fans just want to hear Ali. They don't want to hear the other lot, you know, so that's why we're backing Ali. So I saw his brother talking on YouTube, and his brother was saying, well, yeah, you know, Ali, look, listen, we tried everything. He doesn't talk to me. He didn't come to his mum's funeral, didn't come to our dad's funeral, blah, blah, blah. He's done this, he's done that, etc., etc. And this German interviewer is saying to him, so, oh, why do you think it is that, you know, Ali's done this? He said, well, I suppose it's because he wasn't as successful as he thought he would be after leaving us. Then I look for the Ali Campbell reply, not a direct reply, but he's on This Morning, which is standard fare for breakfast TV in this country. And he's talking to Andy Peters, if you remember Andy Peters. You know, Andy Peters say, yeah, but of course, because he's on there to boost his new tour. So they say, yeah, but we've got to be careful, haven't we? Because there are two UB40s now. And he's like, no, there's only one UB40. I was the guy that sang all the songs, so I am UB40. You know, I don't know about the other lot. And Andy Peters is going, yeah, but there are two. You know, your brother's got. He said, listen, mate, there are loads of tribute bands. There are loads of tribute bands out there, and some of them are actually quite good.
Especially ones with loads of the original members. Yeah.
Well, the problem is for Ali is the voice. That's who they want to see. UB40 have used the likes of Maxi Priest or whatever to stand in for Ali, but that's not what the audience. You can't fool the audience and say, well, where UB40 is a different person singing. They want to hear Ali because he is the unique key ingredient in UB40. He's a brilliant singer, a lovers rock singer, I would say as well. But I heard that the real problem is that when Ali left, he didn't realize that he was saying goodbye to all the American fans, because the promoter, as I understand it was a promoter, if I got that wrong, I apologize. Well, certainly one person within the organization had the key to all the American gigs, all these stadium gigs. They're doing stadium gigs in America. Imagine that. You're going to America to do stadium gigs. You're in England as Ali Campbell or anywhere else you're touring to do festivals. You know, you're just one person on a bill in a festival. in a stadium, you play O'Shea Stadium or wherever it was the Beatles played. You've got 100,000 people there.
That's where the money is. Yeah.
Exactly. So Ali's got the rest of the world as UB40, but they've got America. The rest of them have got America. And that's where the big divide comes. Anyway, don't tell anybody I told you that. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, just a couple of gems of English life. Squeeze, Pulling Muscles from a Shell, which is a great song about the English holiday experience. It's a bit like we were talking about at the start. You know, the time before people took foreign holidays. It's a lovely summer song. And another great song about the English experience, Splodgeness Abounds. 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps, please. It's brilliant. You know, that thing of trying to get served at the bar and you're trying to get it's just wonderfully done, I think.
It is. Do you not think that other song, what's it called? You'll always find me in the kitchen at the parties.
In the kitchen parties, Jonah Louis, yes.
Yeah, number 16
another little
like
slice of English life. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really get into those ones as much. Because, you know, this was still my cool days, you know, and I felt like you'd always find me in the kitchen at parties. I felt that was just a little bit too geeky, if you like.
Yeah. Well, it's a celebration of geekiness, isn't it?
It is, actually. Yeah, you're right. And Englishness, as you've put it as well. I shouldn't forget that side of it. But I just found all those tracks, why can't they play the Squeeze, I think, is a proper tribute to Englishness, but Splodgeness Bounds with Simon Temple, 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps, that just became one of those irritating things that you heard all over the place. And
because it worked, it was good. You know, it's such a brilliant, simple idea. A whole song based around the desperate, futile attempt to get served at closing time.
Yeah, Pulling Muscles from the Shell, I think, is, if you're going to find one tune that is English beyond Englishness, that's the one. And Squeeze is the right group to do it, to be honest.
And this is my kind of youth club days, dancing on a Friday night.
Okay, what did you dance to?
Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway.
Together. Not that kind of dancing, mate.
I hadn't realised it was such a big hit. It's one of my favourite records, and I love. And Donny Hathaway, by this stage, has already left us more than a year ago. He's already gone. But all of these songs, you know, when he's singing with Roberta, credit to Roberta, but you just want to shout out and get Donny in. Get Donny in. Because every time he sings, it's like liquid gold. It's fantastic. To me, it's a truly great record.
They were never supposed to be a duo. They were two solo artists who were both signed to Atlantic Records, and through that they were brought together by one of the producers at Atlantic Records, who suggested that they should do an album together, an album of duets. But before that, at that point, it was to help Roberta out, because Donny was already a star. Donny was already a star.
That live album, late 60s. Right.
Exactly. She hadn't had a hit. She got critical acclaim, but she hadn't had a hit yet. So when they put them together, it was to help Roberta out. But it's clear why Donny Hathaway stands out. It's very clear.
He's magnificent.
Yeah, for me, it's really like, we might disagree on this, but it always reminds me of that duet. This duet in particular always reminds me of, you know, George Michael and Aretha Franklin. With all due respect to George Michael, you're sitting there thinking, look, bring Aretha back on, man. Come on. This is about her. With all due respect, George. And it's his song. I'm not knocking him for that. There are people who love George Michael that will say, no, that's unfair, etc. But really, you listen to the vocals and you're thinking, well, one's the big sister and the other's the little brother.
Sure.
You know, and that's slightly the way this is as well. I feel sorry for Roberta Flack. I think her thing is not, this is within Donny Hathaway's comfort zone, you know, this tune. It is the kind of soul dance tune that was within his comfort zone. She was never quite comfortable with this. She's more of a kind of a jazz pianist, I would say, as well as vocalist. You know, her songs definitely do have more complexity to it than a simple song.
Another one that takes me back to the dance floor, Tina Marie, Behind the Groove, which I think is wonderful bass line.
Brilliant.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, brilliant.
It's great. Just takes me straight back to those uncertain feelings of being a 15-year-old kid. And there's a lovely Scottish take on all of this by one of the bands with the greatest names.
Average White Band. Average White Band. Yeah, it's a good one.
The Average White Band. Let's Go Round Again. It's a great song. They were for me. You were talking about bands. A lot of the artists in this particular chart not with their best. I've never heard anything from the average white band better than Let's Go Round Again.
I really pick up the pieces and all that. You wouldn't say?
Yeah, I prefer Let's Go Round Again. I like Pick Up the Pieces, but I prefer
Yeah,
Let's Go Round Again.
Well, Let's Go Round Again is still a big, big hit out there. You know, all those sort of revival stations, and the hook is amazing. It's just an amazing hook. But I would say the same with Pick Up the Pieces. What about number 47, Light Up the Night by the Brothers Johnson? Wasn't that one of those ones that you stepped to?
Yes. That's getting in there as well. I remember bigger hits from the Brothers Johnson.
Oh, massive hits. Was it Stomp or whatever they had?
Yeah, Stomp All Night. Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, out of all of the, me, myself, and I, Joe and I were trading. You got to give a shout out for.
I've never liked. I don't like it.
You never liked. Oh, right.
I find it irritating.
Okay. Well, then we won't spend much time talking about that.
Different strokes for different folks.
No, I was just going to do my Brummie accent again.
It's a very Birmingham chart, this, isn't it?
Well, it is, but also you will almost fall over when you hear Joan Armatrading speaking the way she does, because she's got a proper Brummie accent. You don't expect that from the woman who is so, I don't know, elegant. I don't want to say that because it makes it sound like I'm not saying that Birmingham Brummie is elegant. I don't mean it like that, but you just... whatever you say, it's going to sound like a stereotype. I was going to say she sounds so intelligent on her record. No, I don't mean it like that. I apologise. Cockney
official notes to the city of Birmingham.
Well, never mind. It wasn't me that said that. It was my alter ego. Number 43, another one, not their best, the Sex Pistols. I'm Not Your Stepping Stone.
They've gone by this stage, haven't they? They've gone.
Exactly. They're well past their sell-by date. Who Wants the World? The Stranglers. They're not past their sell-by date, but you look and think that's not your best either. Well, Little Genie by Elton John, you know, it's not their best. All these people put out these things. Elvis Costello, clever New Amsterdam, but again,
I love New Amsterdam. I'm not a massive Elvis Costello fan, and quite often his biggest success are the ones I like least. This I think is great. Do I put on a break to get out of her clutches? What a fucking brilliant line! I love it. It's New Amsterdam. It's become much too much.
Yeah, although I don't think it's his best by a long shot. I saw him live at the Royal Albert Hall back in about 1978. It would have been maybe 79 at the latest. The guy has got so much to his palate that when I hear something like this, I think, nah, you can do better. He can do proper blues, jazz blues, and he can go to country. He was doing country blues, if you like, long before it became sort of like trendy again now. He could do almost anything. And I think he had an orchestra. I'm pretty sure he had an orchestra. I think he had a band with an orchestra behind him, or at least some of the strings of an orchestra behind him. And one more shout, Mystic Merlin at number 24, Just Can't Give You Up. Yeah, do you remember that from your dancing days?
I do. And Crown Heights Affair, You Gave Me Love. I put those kind of two together.
Yeah, I thought that wasn't the best from Crown Heights, I've got to admit. I didn't think that was the best from Crown Heights Affair, but we beg to differ on one or two points. The Lambrettas, I expected better from them as well, this dance thing. It was just an attempt to get into the charts, that one. Oh, and should we say, I know not everybody likes it now because he's half cancelled, but half not cancelled, I suppose, depending on how much you like his music or how much you can't live without his music. Michael Jackson's She's Out of My Life at number 11. I know you're going to hate it. You're going to hate it.
I don't. I think it's beautifully done. I think it's beautifully done.
Yeah, and his singing is just sublime.
I think it's a wonderful vocal performance, and as with Jackson his best, you really believe he's lived the things that he's telling you about.
I can't quite. He does. Yeah, he does.
Well, that's because you know what you know about him.
Yeah, exactly.
But back then, when we didn't know what we now know about him,
absolutely right.
I really thought that he was telling it like it was.
Yeah,
and it comes back to that great Bob Monkhouse line, isn't it? Sincerity. If you can fake that, you've got it.
Yeah, typical Bob Monkhouse line. We'll let him end this conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure. We've been talking about the match in the Euros from 1980 between England and Belgium, 12th of June 1980. Tim, it's a pleasure.